My name is Jacqueline Ford, and I'm a research assistant professor in the Cognitive and Affective Neuroscience Lab at Boston College. My research focuses on trying to understand how we remember emotional events from our past, particularly as we get older. Today, I'm going to discuss how age may actually make it easier for us to focus on and emphasize the positive elements of an otherwise negative event. When we think about our past, those events that are the most emotional or the most significant tend to be remembered more easily. We focus on those events that helped shape who we are or define our relationships. However, this enhancement is not limited to those events that brought us joy. We also remember quite vividly times of personal, professional, or financial setbacks, times we lost those that we loved, or public events that were so tragic that they affected us all on a deeper level. Thinking about those events, even years after they happened, can have a negative impact on our physical and emotional well-being. Unfortunately, we can't prevent these bad things from happening in our lives, and trying to ignore or suppress the memories entirely is not an effective strategy and can even cause the impact of those memories to be exaggerated. However, there are ways of coping with these negative memories that can reduce the impact. There's considerable research highlighting the value of positive thinking, and this extends to thinking about positive personal memories. Just remembering a personal event has the same effect in the brain as receiving a financial reward, where people will forego a financial reward for the opportunity to think about a positive memory from their past. These positive reminiscences can even help to reduce the impact of a physical stressor on our body. So with all of this research suggesting the benefits of positive memories, what can that tell us about how we should be remembering negative events? Well, research suggests that instead of ignoring these memories entirely, we should learn from what we know about how our bodies respond to positive memories and savor the positive elements or the silver linings of otherwise negative events. For example, thinking about a negative event, such as the loss of a loved one, it's very easy and natural to think about the negative aspects, about the sadness associated with that loss. However, you can also think about the positive, about the wonderful life that person led, or the way people came together to support one another. You may have even seen estranged family members come together in their grief, or learn something about your own life in the process. Recent research has shown that when young adults were instructed to focus on these positive aspects of otherwise negative memories, they could actually reshape the memory representation into being something that was less negative, and that these memory changes persisted for up to 2 months after thinking about those positive aspects just one time. This is the first piece of good news. Although we can't prevent negative things from happening in our lives, we can change how we think about them by emphasizing the positive and de-emphasizing the negative. The second piece of good news is that we now have a number of pieces of evidence from our research showing that age may be associated with an increased tendency to do this naturally and without instruction. This research shows that age is associated with fewer experiences of negative emotion when encountering interpersonal conflict, and with decreased physiological response to these social stressors. Our lab, as well as others, has now shown that this pattern persists when looking at how people responded to the early phases of the COVID pandemic. Despite arguably being at greater risk from the virus, older adults tended to report fewer negative and more positive emotional states compared to their younger counterparts. This is all to say that age may bring with it an increased ability to cope with negative experiences in the moment. But what happens when we are past these negative events? We now also have evidence suggesting that age influences how we think back on these negative events. In a series of experiments, we looked at how people remembered a single highly emotional event, the 2013 Boston Marathon bombings. Not surprisingly, individuals across the adult lifespan reported focusing on the negative aspects, anger at the bombers, fear of future attacks, and sadness for the victims. However, age was associated with an increased tendency to report focusing on the positive aspects as well. The heroic actions of the first responders and the way the city came together. This shows a way in which age may be associated with an increased ability to see and focus on the silver linings of otherwise negative events. Further, when we followed up with these same individuals 6 months later, we found that young adults reported focusing on the negative aspects to a greater extent than they had initially reported, and older adults reported focusing on those negative aspects less, suggesting that focusing on those silver linings initially may bring with it an ability to decrease the negativity of memories over time. Finally, we have a number of neuroimaging studies in our lab that suggest that this decreased negativity, while not intentional, may be a controlled process that is initiated by an area of the brain that directs thought and action. This, in conjunction with the fact that these changes are greatest in older adults with the greatest cognitive and neural health, suggest that this is an adaptive skill that is acquired with age. So when we leave these pandemic and national stressors, it's important to allow yourself to carry the memories with you. They've been formative and impactful, and trying to ignore them entirely may ultimately do you more harm than good. However, if you find yourself troubled by these memories, know that trying to focus on the positive aspects can decrease the negativity of the memory and ultimately its impact.